being recorded. We're going to upload this to our YouTube channel for all of our nice Splash friends who couldn't attend tonight. A little bit about Firestorm. This is actually an event that people who run splashes all across the country. We do a conference every year. Sometimes it's in Boston, sometimes it's in Palo Alto, all over the country. And a bunch of us get together, somewhere between like 40 to 70 of us who run splashes all across the country. And we do this as a fun activity for us. So we figured that we would bring it to you guys in a fun format. We're hoping to just get everyone excited for the rainstorm that's coming up in the next week, get everyone in their splashiest mindset. And we've got a pretty cool schedule of events up here for tonight. I believe that the first on our itinerary is going to be a lesson in 5-minute mac and cheese from our friend Cori.
Hello. Hey everyone. Like Lauren said, thanks for joining. So since Firestorm is typically 5-minute classes, I think I'm going to set my 5-minute timer to see if we can actually make mac and cheese in 5 minutes. It's supposed to be the whole class, so I'll just start it and we'll get into it. And clicking. Okay, so to make mac and cheese, you're going to need pasta, any kind of milk. I'm using oat. Cheese, I'm going to grate that. Nothing pre-prepared. You'll need a grater, spoon, measuring cup, and a microwave-safe bowl. So the first thing you're going to want to do is open up your pasta. Small kinds work best. I'm going to pour out half a cup of pasta into my bowl. I only have a 1/4 cup, so I'm going to be doing 2. It's spilling everywhere. 1, 2. I also need a half cup of water. Didn't pre-prepare anything, so I have to go to the sink. All right, we have half a cup measured. Preferably, if you like salty taste, let's add a pinch of salt. Gotta get the salt, just adding a pinch. And then you're going to mix that up and microwave for 2 to 3 minutes, depending on the strength of your microwave. Mine is weak, so I'm doing 3. And while that's happening, I'm gonna grate the cheese. Using the real stuff, white cheddar, extra sharp. You can use probably whatever you want as long as it melts well. And you're only gonna need a 1/4 cup of that. So don't know if you actually wanna see my grating. There's my dog. Grating this cheddar. This is a lot less exciting to watch than I thought. Making it rain. My dog really wants a piece of cheddar. I think that's more than enough. I'm just gonna scrape that into my cup. My dog is eating the cheese that I spilled on the floor. Grated is definitely important for this because you're gonna want it to melt as fast as possible. So there's my cup. I have a lot of extra cheddar. My timer is at 2 minutes left. So I guess we have extra time to kill. I don't know. What do you guys want to talk about in the chat? Dog. This is my dog. Oh, all right. He ran away. Favorite cheese has got to be white cheddar. Definitely tell me what your favorite is. I think I'm going to add some Parmesan sprinkle as well. I don't know how you guys feel about that. And, you know, as far as dietary restrictions go, you can definitely go vegan cheese if you're lactose intolerant. I'm not really sure if the gluten-free pasta will work with this, but if it does, let me know. Doggo name reveal, this is Helix with an H. He gets called Felix a lot, but it's not. Slice substitute would definitely work if you break it up, yeah. Can't hear the meeting, I'm sorry. After the shape of DNA, yes. All right, we're down to 1 minute on the clock. I guess this is gonna be easier than I thought, but we're only 3 minutes in. What are you guys excited for after this? I'm excited to hear about Sophia's class. All right, 40 seconds left, but let's take a look. I hope you used a tall bowl if you're cooking along with me, because sometimes this stuff can boil over. My pasta is still pretty hard, so I think I'm gonna need the extra 40. Yeah, I'm hoping there's a good cheese pull as well. How long in there? I put it in for 3 minutes, so we're down to 30 seconds left. Cheese is pretty awesome. Yeah, I think this would be a good college recipe. I also like to make mug cakes as well. Can be done in a minute, maybe for next time. So the step after this is we're gonna mix up the pasta, make sure it's fully cooked, then just add cheese, 1/4 cup, and 3 tablespoons of milk, any kind you want. Then you're gonna microwave that for 30 seconds. All right, we are done. This is really hot. I'm gonna add in the cheese. Adding in the cheese, mixing that up. Then adding in the oat milk. I lost my tablespoon, so I'm really just approximating here. 3, give that a stir. Now let's microwave it for another 30 seconds. If anyone's cooking along, I know you can't respond now, but I would love to hear how this turns out. Hopefully it's edible. Added the milk before, I think that'll be fine. It's all liquid. All right, we're down to 4 seconds. Gonna give myself a little leniency here if you want to see the final product. 15. Okay, let's see if we can cut corners. It's a little bit soupy, but I think we can manage. Oh, I don't know if we can manage a cheese pull. This is my final product. If anyone's cooking along, I think I'm gonna put it in the microwave for another 30 seconds. I'm sorry I disappointed. I'm already at 5:30, so I'm gonna have to tap out, but do let me know how yours turned out.
All right, that was real good. I guess I'm putting a chocolate mug cake recipe in the chat at some point. But while that's in the works, we're going to jump over to learning about the Pigpen Cipher with Sophia.
All right. Hi, everyone. For those of you who like secret codes and like ciphers and ways to write secret messages, this is the Firestorm for you. Before we begin, it would be helpful if you had like a piece of scrap paper and a writing utensil near you. If you don't, it's fine. You could still follow along, but it'd be helpful just to like write stuff out. I'm going to share screen if that is okay. Okay, here we are. And can everyone see this? All right, I'm gonna assume this is fine.
All good.
Okay, cool. So the Pigpen Cipher, why is it called the Pigpen Cipher? I don't really know why, but this is the key to the Pigpen Cipher. This is all you need to know to be able to write out secret messages. And I assume it's because you see this is kind of like in a grid. And the history of this secret code is very long. Apparently, it's been around for like thousands of years. And it's also called the Freemason Cipher because the Freemasons like to use it a lot. And apparently, it was also used during the Civil War by Union soldiers who were held in Confederate prisons to send secret messages to each other. So a little bit background info on that. It's super easy to learn. You just have to know this code right here. And this is, you could just look up Pigpen Cipher on Google if you ever forget it, and it'll pop up with this image. And let me show you how to use it. So if I wanted to write the word splash, pardon my bad handwriting, I am on a mouse. And you can do this along with me if you have your pencil and paper. Okay, so S, I need to find this S, right? This is here on this X type shape. So the S occupies this top like V shape of this, this picture. So the S would be a V. This will be S. P, I'm finding that. It's right here. It's like the bottom left of this grid with a dot here. So when you write this out, you don't have to put the dot necessarily on like the corner. It can be in the middle. This means P. And L, same thing. It's up here with the dot. L. A is right here. Is just no dot, just this top shape. S again, this is a V. And then an H, you see right here, it's like this bottom shape right here. And this is splash in the Pigpen Cipher. All right, so next up, what I want you to do is on your sheet of paper, write out your name in the Pigpen cipher and also the street name of the high school that you go to, or if you don't remember that or you don't know that, then a street name of the street that you live on. And I'm going to do the same for my high school. And then when I'm done, and after you're done, I can use some help decoding that. So just a quick brief thing for like W or Y. This is W. W would look like this because it has the dot right here. And I think you have all the tools you need. Just let me know if you have any questions. And yeah, I'll give you like 2 minutes to do that if I'm okay on time. All right. In the meantime, I'll write my schools. Okay. All right. If anyone is done, does anyone want to take a crack at solving my security question?
Great, moving on. Unfortunate, it seems that Cori's firestorm has resulted in a microwave explosion. So we've got that going on, and Sophia's class has resulted in some security compromises. So hopefully, moving on to my class, I don't destroy your life too much, but we'll see how it goes. Can everyone see the thing?
Yes.
Thank you, thank you. All right, guys, so we're going to be talking about jet lag poop. This is actually from an article. I dropped the article link in the chat and in the Discord in case you want to check out some of the other figures later. But basically, the whole big title, all it means is jet lag poop, so that's what we're going to be talking about. So things that you need to know about for this presentation, it's kind of two domains, right? And the first thing that we're talking about is the circadian rhythm, which is way more important than you thought and also crucial to the function of every cell in your body, and also the microbiome. That's the collection of all of the bugs and germs, microbes, bacteria that all live inside your intestines and on the skin, on your hands and everywhere in your body. And that's also way more important than you thought and also crucial to your whole body's function. But a little more information about these things. Circadian rhythms are about 24 hours. They're cycles. They involve every cell in your body, and the microbiome regulates all of your body's functions for the most part. Also, your body is 10 times more microbes than it is you. You have 10 times more microbial cells making you up than there are your own cells. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the intersection of kind of these two things. So like the way that you might think that these things interact right now is you might think that like you decide when you want to eat, and when you eat decides when you poop, and what you eat decides whether or not you're prone to obesity or not. And that's my obesity emoji, work with me. And that you decide when you're going to sleep, but maybe like the sun and the moon also kind of decide when you're going to sleep, and that you just decide what your circadian rhythm is. And that's not actually how this works. And the microbiome is just like, what's that? That doesn't have anything to do with anything. But actually, like if I were to explain to you how all of these things interact and overlap, it would just be like a messy spider web of arrows where all of them inform how all of them work. And so we're going to talk a lot about how your microbiome influences your circadian rhythm, and how your circadian rhythm influences your microbiome, and how they affect behaviors like when you eat, when you sleep, and if you get heavy or not. So there are a bunch of circadian rhythm disorders that people can have, and the one that we're talking about is jet lag here. So jet lag, it's you know, if you've ever traveled outside of the country, you've taken a long flight, you know what that's like when you wake up the next day and you're like, oh, I am not in the right time zone. And so it's just a graph of what some of these other circadian rhythm disorders look like, but we're focusing on jet lag, where you're on a standard cycle for a while, and then all of a sudden your cycle just gets shifted by like 6-8 hours, something crazy like that. But all of these circadian rhythm disorders, they lead to really bad health outcomes. And this affects a lot of people who work nights. So nurses, security guards, things like that. And it leads to obesity, cancer, heart disease, all sorts of things. And so we're going to try to look at why that might happen. So first part of our experiment, we're going to jet lag mice, and then we're going to see if their bacteria gets messed up. So here's my schematic. We took mice and we made them eat either when it was light out or when it's dark out. Mice, as you might know, are nocturnal. They like to eat when it's dark out. That's when they like to be awake. But we took mice and we made half of them eat during the day. And what we did is we sequenced the bacteria. We figured out how much bacteria of each different kind was in their body at different time points around the clock. So every 4 to 6 hours, right? And so we can see here is the blue line, or the mice that ate normally. And you can see that they had different levels of bacteria at different times. During the daytime, they were getting, you know, the bacteria was multiplying and reproducing, and they were getting more of it. And at nighttime, it would drop down. And this is important because bacteria do a bunch of different functions in your body. So some are more important when you're digesting food, and some are more important when you're not. And so you see the mice that were light fed, it's completely opposite, right? Instead of having this much bacteria then, they have that much bacteria then. And it's kind of like opposite graphs there. So then we go into the second phase of our experiment. And what we did is we decided we're going to jet lag mice. We're going to feed them terrible food, high-fat diet food. And then we're going to take the poop out of those mice, and we're going to put their poop into other mice. And we're going to see if that poop messes up the mice. This is called fecal transplantation. And it's important because what you're doing is you're taking all of the bacteria from one organism and putting it into another completely different organism, so that there's nothing else affecting them besides the microbial content of their poop. That's the only variable, right? So what we did is we took mice and then we divided them into two groups. We had one group on a light dark cycle where they were sleeping and being awake and eating food whenever they wanted, but whenever they ate food, it was terrible fatty food. We had another group of mice and we jet lagged the crap out of them, quite literally. What we did to those mice is about every 3 days, we shifted them ahead 8 hours. It's kind of like if you flew from wherever you were 6 time zones east every 3 days. And they did that for weeks upon weeks upon weeks, but they also fed them really terrible food. So then we took the poop out of those mice and we put them into new mice to make sure that the only thing that was affecting those mice was the bacteria from the poop that they received. And then we decided to see how fat did these mice get. And what you see is the group of mice that were doing their normal sleep wake on their normal light dark nocturnal thing. Even though they were eating bad food, they did not get nearly as heavy as those mice that were jet lagged were. The jet lagged mice are red. And in science, whenever you see 2 stars above a graph, that means that it's really important as a result. So yeah, the jet lagged mice got really fat. Okay, interesting. Let's take a look at what that looks like in an MRI. Well, on the left, you can see that the mouse on the right side is a whole lot bigger than the mouse on the left side. And then on the right, you can see what happened after they did the fecal transplantation. So these were into mice that, most importantly, were not jet lagged. These mice were living their normal mouse life until they got the bad poop. And then once they got the bad poop, they had the bad poop microbes and it made them get heavy. And so on the bottom left, you can see what happened. The red graph is when we took the poop from the jet lagged mice and we put them into mice that, again, did not do the jet lag. The only thing that they did is they received poop. And compare that to that black line of those mice that were not jet lagged. All they did is received normal poop from other mice. And then on the right, you can see that the mice who received the jet lagged poop, they had problems with their activity too. They were awake at all times of the night and day and eating at all times of night and day. So it messed up their circadian rhythm too. So the big finding of here is that, you know, mice who have a circadian rhythm that are messed up, it messes up their bacteria, and their messed up bacteria create all sorts of problems. They heighten obesity risk. So then they did this experiment and they were like, it's not enough that we're just doing this with mice. We need to bring people into the mix. So what they did is they decided that we're going to jet lag some people. So they had three groups of people. They had people who were our controls, that's on the left side. They just did their normal people thing, awake during the day and asleep at night. And then we had our middle group, and these were people that we subject to that same kind of jet lag situation where we're going to take their poop right after they fly across the world. And then we had the group on the right, and they had experienced jet lag. They had taken a big flight across the world, but we waited a few weeks before we took the poop out of the people. Then we took the poop out of all the people, and we put all the people poop into mice that didn't have any bacteria. And then we fed them crap again. We fed them a really terrible diet. And what we saw is we saw that the mice who had gotten the poop from the jet-lagged people developed obesity, whereas the mice who had gotten the poop from the people who weren't jet-lagged, they did okay. So the moral of the story is if you have to take a flight, don't let someone put your poop into a mouse. It'll get fat. And that's kind of the best we got. All right, so our next person unfortunately can't attend, so that means that we're going to be moving on to Brandon, where we're going to be learning about Olber's paradox. Did I get that right, Brandon?
That is correct, and what a segue from putting human poop in the mice in the in the Olber's paradox.
It's a paradox in and of itself, I think.
Of course. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Everyone seeing the presentation okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. All right. So, hi everyone, my name is Brandon. And hopefully today I'll give you a good overview of what Olber's paradox is, right? So this is an astrophysics paradox. And it really asks the question as to why the sky is dark at night. And if you've never heard of this paradox or its solution, I think you're in for a treat. Because the first time I learned it, blew my mind, changed the way I look at the night sky forever. And it was one of the big reasons I studied astrophysics in college. So before we actually get into Olber's paradox, we need a little bit of background. Here's a fact. Hopefully it's not mind-blowing. The universe is infinite. Doesn't matter whether or not you believe it, it's a fact. The universe is infinite. So what does this mean for what we want to actually know? Well, pick a direction in the sky, right? There's a direction, nothing special about it. Keep looking in that direction. The universe is infinite. You can travel as far as you want in that direction. Because we can travel as far as we want, we'll eventually run into a star. You might say, what if we don't run into a star? Well, then keep going. It's infinite, right? Keep going until you find a star. You'll find one, right? Pick another direction, do the same thing, right? Again, universe is infinite. You can go as far as you want. Eventually, you'll run into a star. And you can do that again and again and again. And so with every direction and any direction that we choose in the night sky, if you go far enough, you will run into a star as a consequence of the fact that the universe is infinite. So you might say, okay, great, big deal, right? This is actually a big paradox, right? So where does the paradox come in? Well, this is what the night sky looks like. That shouldn't surprise anybody. But if you do the math, if there were a star along every single point that you could, or in every single direction that you could point out in the sky, the night sky, the entirety of it would be as bright as the sun. So it would look like this. Obviously, this isn't what the night sky looks like, right? We do not see a star in every single direction. Even with our best telescopes, it's just not the case. And this is Olber's paradox. If there's a star in every direction, why can't we see them? Why is the night sky dark? So what's the solution, right? And this is a part of the story that blows my mind. One of the first recorded solutions that we have in history, right? Jump scare warning, none other than Edgar Allan Poe. Edgar Allan Poe figured out this paradox before most major physicists and astronomers did. And he wrote this in his Eureka prose poem. He said, the only mode, therefore, in which under such a state of affairs we could comprehend the voids which our telescopes find in innumerable directions would be by supposing the distance of the invisible background so immense that no ray from it has yet been able to reach us at all. Great, that's what he said. Let's decode exactly what that means and how this solves this paradox. So what Poe over here is saying, he's saying, look, let's say a star has formed in the universe. There it is, right? There's a star, it just formed. Its light is beginning to travel towards us here on Earth. And what Poe says, he says, look, this star is so far away that it would take the light 16 billion years to reach us. And what Poe realized, of all people, what if the universe isn't 16 billion years old yet? meaning it would take the light so long to reach us that the universe isn't even old enough for the light to have reached us yet. And it turns out this is the solution. This is exactly what happens. Everywhere you look, there is a star there. There just hasn't been enough time for the star's light to reach us, right? So to nail in the point a little bit more, here's the diagram we had before. Like I said, there is a star there in every direction. But some of those stars are so far away that the light hasn't even had time to reach us. And that's a solution of the paradox. You might say, okay, great. It's a pretty cool paradox, pretty cool solution, right? But why did this blow my mind? Why did this blow my mind? What's so amazing about this? Well, here's a picture of the night sky. I don't know, tonight, go outside. It's dark for some of you. Go outside, look at this, and choose a dark spot. There's a dark spot, right? I just told you, the reason you don't see a star there is because the light hasn't reached us yet. But then what are you seeing then? If you're not seeing a star, then what are you seeing? And what blows my mind every time I look at the night sky is you're seeing the universe as it was in the past, millions of years before stars even formed, right? When you look up at the night sky, you're looking at the most expansive and in-depth history book you'll ever read. It's incredible. You're seeing the universe before stars even formed, right? And that blows my mind. And on top of that, you're seeing proof that the universe had a beginning, that the universe has only been around for a finite amount of time, meaning you're seeing proof of the Big Bang, right? This all started at a certain point in time. That blows my mind, right? I remember when my professor, it was a professor that was teaching an astrophysics class, he showed us this, and he left us with this final point. And he said, sometimes it is in darkness that we find the most precious truths and beauties. And I was stunned. It was, by that point, I knew I wanted to study astrophysics, and it was done. And that's it. That's all I have to say about Olber's paradox.
Well, that was really awesome and existential, Brandon. So thank you for the crises that we're all having right now. In another world of crises and things you can trust and not trust, we are going to move on to Trevor, who is going to teach us about linguistics.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to show you all why you cannot trust your ears. Your ears are liars, and we're going to find out about why. I need to share my screen. Okay, I'll just share the whole thing. Hopefully that'll work out fine. Hold on, I also need sound. I think also need sound. Sorry, I haven't had to use Zoom very much in quite a while, so working on that. So here I have a recording of the words gun and gum. So I'm going to play those for you so you can make sure I'm not lying to you, since this is about trust.
Gun, gum.
Right, those are both first is gun and first is gum. These two words are identical except for the final consonant. In gun, the final consonant is N. You can sort of see that here where these smudges, and for people interested in technical terms, this is called a spectrogram. But to most other people, they just look like a series of smudges. So here is right around where the N starts, and it starts to look different from the rest of the word gun. And you have that here as well for gum. This is where the M starts. And so what we're going to do is switch the only two sounds of gun and gum that are different. So we're going to take the M or the N from the end of gun and put it where the M at the end of gum is. And we're going to move the M to where the N was and see if these two words sound any different. And since these are the only two differences between the sounds, they should change along with the consonants. So this is going to be a little bit technical, but I'm selecting the part right around where the N and the M switch. And pick out a point here. It's right around where that is. So this should be our, all of our, what is this? This is the N. So you can hear that a little bit. So I'm going to cut that out. And now we have nothing. So this is just gun.
Gun.
And now we're going to put it right where the vowel in gum starts, or right where the vowel in gum ends. Should be about here. We're going to pick that spot. And now we have our N from gun at the end of the G of gum. So now this should sound like gun. And the other one, we're going to grab this M now. And we're going to put that where our N used to be. Just need to get this all situated really quick. I'm gonna grab all of this. That should be fine. Okay, and we're gonna put this here where we had the end of gun. Might sound a little weird because I didn't quite do the editing right, but we expect that this should now sound like gum, our first word, because we put the N after gu. So this should be gum, and our second one should be gum. And now we're going to see if that ends up coming out the way we expect.
Gun, gun, gun.
So I don't know about everyone else, but to me that sounds like gun still, even though I put an M there. And we'll see if this sounds any different.
Gum, gum, gum.
So that still sounds like gum to me. And so maybe it just doesn't matter if you switch around N's and M's. So we have another pair of words that only differ by the presence of an M or an N. So we have me and knee.
Me. Knee.
So everyone can hear the difference?
Me. Knee.
So those are clearly different words, again, with an M and an N. And you can see where the M stops is right around here, again, because the smudges change. And same thing here. Our smudges change, so our M ends here and our N ends there. So we're going to switch these around and see if we get the same results as switching the M's and N's from gun and gum. It's kind of important where you pick these from, so sorry about that. I should have one here. So now our M has been taken out of me, and we're going to put it where knee used to be. All right, and complete the switch and move the N from knee to where M used to be.
Knee. Me.
So now these have switched where we now hear
Knee.
knee,
Me.
me. So now switching the M and the N suddenly matters. What this lesson teaches us is that the way we differentiate sounds, the contrast between sounds doesn't always have to do with the actual sound itself. So in the gun gum difference, we actually determine whether we're hearing an M or an N at the end of a word during the vowel. So if you look at these smudges, you can see that they behave a little bit differently at the end. In gun and gum, the end of the vowel here, right, the smudges basically say straight. And at the end of the vowel in gum, the smudges kind of pinch together at the end. And so you actually decide that you're hearing an M here because of this pinching together of the smudges in gum that aren't here when you hear the end of gun. And that's really what you're deciding means you're hearing gun instead of gum. But when you have an M and an N in a different place, like in me and me at the beginning of a word, the actual properties of the M and N are more important than changes in the vowel next to it. And so that's kind of a way that you decide you're hearing what information in basically an acoustic signal. And I think that's everything I had. So you can't always trust your ears because even though you know you're changing something, you might hear it a little bit differently. So don't trust your ears.
Thank you, Trevor. This question, or there's a question in the chat of whether this is being recorded or not, and it absolutely is. We're putting it on our YouTube channel for everyone, where hopefully you can trust your ears a little bit more from hearing it twice. We are now going to move on to Chloe, who is hopefully going to be talking about Robert Frost poems that do not include the words gum, gun, me, or knee.
Hopefully,
And if you have
not. I don't
lingering questions in the chat, feel free to keep them coming. And let's all let Chloe break our minds now.
Woo. All right. Let me pull up my thing. Don't start the timer yet. I've got the timer going on my phone, so I'm gonna start it in high school, or also maybe just you've seen it in life. Something called "The Road Not Taken." That is the name of the poem, although it is often misquoted as "The Road Less Traveled," because that is the most famous line in said poem. And it's a very interesting poem because most poems don't penetrate the popular consciousness, but "The Road Not Taken" has a particular kind of like American quality, it's like, oh, I made the difference by taking the road less traveled by. I actually I really love this poem, but not for maybe the reason you think. It was actually in a Ford Motor ad, because they're like, the road less traveled by. You want to take your Ford Explorer out into nature and really go out there. But it turns out that's not at all what the poem's about. So we're gonna go through the poem, just a quick refresher. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth, then took the other, just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Now, one thing important to know about this poem is the context in which it was written. So, Robert Frost actually wrote this poem as a sort of fun thing about his walks with Edward Thomas. So Edward Thomas was another famous poet. They were buddies. They really liked hanging out with each other, and they would take walks in Worcestershire, England, sort of in the forest. And Edward Thomas could not make up his mind. So whenever there was a fork in the road, he'd be like, he'd need to think about it for like 5 minutes before deciding which path to take. And then whenever he took that path, he would be like, oh darn, we probably would have been better off taking the path that we didn't take. And so, Robert Frost was like, he was trying to poke fun at his friend. He was just being like, hey, two roads diverged in a yellow wood. And, really, they're actually kind of the same. Because if you read the poem, it says, well, the other is just as fair and perhaps having the better claim because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that passing there had worn them really about the same. So what he's saying in this poem is the paths are actually the same. It doesn't matter which one you take. You just, it'll be good to take one. And it's so funny because basically in popular culture, we did not get the joke. Robert Frost actually read this to a bunch of university students, and they all took it really seriously, and he was so disappointed. And even when he sent this to his friend did not get it. He was like, oh, it does mean a lot to me. This choice means so much, and I can't believe, I would not get the joke if you had not told me about it. So Robert Frost is, yes, Robert Frost is the complete nihilist. But I think that there's actually something kind of wonderful about the fact that basically every reading of this poem, everybody is like, no, my life does have meaning and the choices I make do matter. And, you know, even if in sort of the grand scheme of things, nothing really matters, the choices you make, they matter to you. And I think that that kind of ethos is how we actually make change in the world. So I frankly, I love the misreading of the poem. And I also appreciate sort of the fact that the real meaning is that there is no meaning, but then you can make your own. So yeah, that's woo. Robert Frost. Now you know. Now you can I don't know, tell all of your friends that Robert Frost actually just kind of hates life. I mean, if you've read his other poems, you would see that he's like very dark and depressing. Like he writes a poem about this like boy that's just like chopping wood, and then he gets his hand cut off, and then they try to put him under in surgery, and then he bleeds out while he's in surgery and dies, and then everybody just pretends like everything's fine, like his whole family just moves on and keeps working the next day because that's all they can do. Like that's Robert Frost. But yeah. Anyway, so now you know a little bit more about some poetry and the probably the most famous American poem. Have a great night, everyone. I hope you enjoyed Firestorm.
Yeah, that was a great ending. We all really love to think about whether life matters or not. So on that note, we're going to probably adjourn. We can hang around for a little bit if anybody wants to talk about what Cori taught them about mac and cheese, or what Sophia taught them about the Pigpen Cipher. We can talk about jet lag poop. Brandon can tell you more about why the stars are more beautiful than you thought they were, or why the darkness is. We could learn about why we don't trust our ears, or we can talk more about Robert Frost. But on that note, if you have no questions or don't really feel like sticking around to chat, thank you for coming to Firestorm. We were really happy to have you guys and put on this little event. And we're all very excited for Rainstorm coming up on the horizon.